Hi, I'm Rusty Wise.
And I'm Jermaine Gash.
And tonight on the Wise News Network, we are in Mount Holly, North Carolina, standing in front of the Mount Holly Historical Association, where there may be a potential move of the museum off Main Street. This has been happening around the area as far as moving museums off Main Streets to other locations. And tonight at the City Council meeting, an architectural firm is going to do a report on their study as far as what they may do with this building.
Yes, so tonight, stay tuned. We're hoping to find out about the potential future of this historic museum, so stay tuned, guys.
Next is a presentation of facilities condition assessment at 131 South Main Street, and I'm going to call on Gary Brinkley to introduce Creechin Associates.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. For the past 9 months, I've been able to chair a special committee that the mayor appointed. There were 5 citizens: Bobby Melanie Black, Rodney Williams, and Richard Brown, along with Mr. Meadows and Mr. Craig, and several representatives from the city staff. And the purpose was to review possible upgrades to the old City Hall that some of us affectionately know as the municipal building. Committee established goals, established some criteria for the selection of a company to be responsible for investigating the building and documenting, and that's what we're going to hear tonight. We selected Creechin Associates. They began their work in January of this year, and tonight you're going to hear the culmination of their work. I want to thank the mayor and the council for letting this process take place. I think we all now have a much better idea of what's in front of us, and that make it less complicated, but at least we know a whole lot more about it than we did, this time last year. Okay. Michael, if you'll come up. This is Michael Sapino from Creechin Associates.
So after we started the project, we had a team that was made up of several different consultants kind of go through the building and assess their respective scopes for the project. From there, we came up with a preliminary report where we took all that information, simplified it and compiled it into a report that we then gave a client update to. I believe the advisory committee was the folks that heard that preliminary report update. From there, we took their feedback, went back, analyzed the data that we found in through the assessment and the feedback from the advisory committee, came up with some renovation options, and then we took those renovation options and sent them to a professional cost estimator. We also used a MC Moore Construction to kind of vet those costs to make sure that we were, had a good data set for our cost estimate, and that brings us, excuse me, to the final report that we'll see here tonight. So here is a quick summary of the renovation strategies. I think it's important to note that there's several different ways that you could approach a problem like this. Kind of our industry standard and the way that we go forward with a lot of these projects is really to investigate the various levels of time, cost, and scope, right? Those are the 3 main factors of most projects. And so what we've done, like we've done in other projects of this kind, is really identify what we feel is a low impact solution. So that's a solution that has a minimal impact on the time, cost, and scope. And it doesn't address all of the issues, but it focuses on the major issues that we think need to be resolved. And then we give a solution that's a medium impact. Again, kind of medium impact on the time, cost, and scope. And this addresses all of the items from the low impact, but it adds another layer of refinement to the strategy. So we pick up a few more deficiencies and solve some other problems. But again, trying to find a kind of a happy medium between the low and the high impact scenarios. When we look at the high impact, that's the full thing. That addresses everything that we found in the reports and any of the other information that was shared with us through the course of the study. So those are the 3 main ones. And again, I think it's important to realize that this is a pretty straightforward way on how to approach a project like this, but there are several solutions to this renovation problem. And oftentimes when we do these, it's not any of the solutions that we put in front of you. Oftentimes it's bits and pieces from each strategy that combine to make some hybrid solution. But by allowing or providing the information in this format, it allows you to kind of pick and choose and create some of your own hybrid solutions. So we find this is an effective strategy for a project like this. And I had promised that we would talk about the elevator. The elevator is tricky. Some of the details with the elevator. Placement of the elevator is problematic. The floor height changes in the basement and the partial second floor make locating an elevator a little difficult.
told you guys this was complicated. It's very complicated. This building obviously was not built with renovations in mind. In the 20s they built it. I understand, I think in the early days it was a department store. It later became the headquarters for A&E, and then I think in the late 60s it became the City Hall, the predecessor to this complex. Vacated in around 2008, something like that, I think. So anyway, very complicated and very interesting to figure out. And I think Michael and his associates have done an excellent job in trying to break it down. It's not less complicated, but at least we know what some of the issues and components are. We've talked earlier, and the mayor said to me there's never the intention to harm the Historical Society, and I accept and believe that. But I have to also say that I think moving us is going to be, one of my peers said that's going to be like the final nail in the coffin. That it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. When you move the museum away from Main Street and away from the crowds that we get at parades and fireworks and the city music and whatever, our traffic is going to dwindle to a trickle. It's difficult for any nonprofit to recruit volunteers. And this is going to make recruiting of volunteers even more difficult. When people come to be a docent and nobody comes in, eventually you lose your enthusiasm and it's going to get difficult. So I'm worried about the long-term viability of the society and its ability to support the museum. It's something we need to just think about. This is not in my notes, but I thought about this earlier. I joined the Master Gardeners several years ago, and there's a little saying that they use called right plant, right spot, and that applies here. The museum is the right plant, and it is in the right spot. And you're going to have the right plant in the wrong spot. And no matter how badly any of us want a plant to grow, you put it in the wrong spot, it's going to fail. You can't will it to do better, because if it's in the wrong spot, it just isn't going to work. And so that's we need to think about right plant, right spot. And then to conclude, I want to go back to some advice given by former Mayor Bobby Black. He had a little recognition dinner several months ago and gave some concluding remarks. And one of the things that stuck with me that he said multiple times, he kept saying, listen to the citizens, listen to the citizens. So I think in this case, the citizens have been fairly vocal about the whole museum issue, about moving. There have been emails, text messages, all kinds of ways they've expressed themselves. Many of them are here tonight. And so there are a lot of people that fundamentally believe we need to stay where we are and not move. And the reasons, or at least some of what I have said, and there may be others that other people would express. So that's all I have to offer tonight. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time. Thank you.
I don't think we'd be here tonight if we weren't listening to the citizens. We have stopped the entire process to listen to the citizens. So I think that the next step is to listen more. How does the Historical Society, our committee, work together to make a recommendation on moving forward? The reality is of what we've seen tonight. We are going to work together to the right solution. And paying for $1 million to $3 million is still got to be done one way or another. So we can do $1 million, or we can do $2 million, or we can do $3 million. It's still going to impact your taxes. It's still going to impact the cost, regardless of what we do. So it's a tough decision.
We just left a city council work session in Mount Holly, North Carolina, where they discussed the museum building uptown.
Yes.
Actually, we did talk to the mayor, and they've never really considered selling the building because they know that the public outcry would be too much.
Yes, and the mayor did mention that it's more of a collaboration, and that's really why they, one of the reasons they wanted to address the museum tonight is because they wanted the citizens to know that they are being heard.
Yes, they steered a advisory committee and listened to that committee, and the presentation tonight by Creech and Associates was basically three options. First option was basically partially renovate the building and leave the museum intact.
Yes.
The second was mainly renovating the first floor and then having a shell for the other floors.
With that option, the museum would be gone as well.
Or if they could, they mentioned they could possibly move back in.
True.
And then the third would just remodel the whole building and they could still move back in.
Yes.
So none of the options really kicked the museum out, so to speak. So it's still up in the air. There's still a lot of decisions to be made. They did mention an elevator and some basically possibilities of putting an elevator and
Yes.
the cost of that.
And also, if an elevator is not available, that option, they mentioned a lift, a less expensive option for an elevator.
Yes. So we learned a lot here at the city council meeting on how they conduct business, especially when it comes to a museum, and that's happened in quite a few cities in our area as far as moving not just museums but other buildings or other city halls off of Main Street onto other avenues.
That is true.
So I'm Rusty Wise.
And I'm Jermaine Gash.